Welcome to our Mathematics Online classes. Today's lesson is about percentage. Percent means por ciento. That means that we have one whole that represents 100 parts. This whole number could be divided in many parts. From them, we take 50%. 50% is, as you can see, the shaded part. Now, this symbol is telling you that's a ratio. That means that 50 is part of a 100, since 100 is the biggest part. From this biggest part, we're taking 50. Well, this could be represented as a ratio, like 50 is a part of 100. If I reduce this fraction, I can say that 50 is contained in 2 times 100. So 50 divided by 50 is 1. 100 divided by 50 is 2. So this ratio is showing us that could be a fraction and also could be shown as a ratio like this, 1 is to 2. Okay, now, given this concept, we can say that 25% is the same as dividing 25 by 100. If I do all this simplification, my answer will be 1/4. If I divide 1 by 4, the answer in a decimal form is going to be 0.25. So percent can be expressed, can be written in the forms of a ratio, in the forms of a fraction, a decimal, or a ratio. Here we have an example that we have here 25%, but percent can also be less than 1. If this is less than 1 as a decimal, we can also say that this 47 is a 47%. So let's see. We have 45%. Written as a fraction, it could be 45 divided by 100. As a decimal, we have to divide 45 by 100. That means that I have to put 2 places to the right. And as a ratio, 45 is to 100. Well, it's simple to say that 3% could be like 3 divided by 100. If I do this division, this will be my answer. And as a ratio, 3 is 100. So there are 3 ways of expressing a percent: as a fraction, as a decimal, as a ratio, or as a percent by itself. Okay, how do we find the percentage of a given number? Let's say that we have 200. We want to know how much is going to be the 15% of 200. Well, what I have to do is change 15% into its decimal way, its decimal form. So it's very simple. I will have to put a decimal point in front of the 15 because it's divided by 100. So my decimal representation of 15% is 0.15. Multiplied by the number which I want to find is going to give me 30. It's very simple. 2 times 15 is going to be 30. But since we have 2 decimals, with these 2 zeros are going to be cancelled. So if you do this multiplication by hand or by calculator, you will find that the answer is 30. Another example that we have here is 12%. We want to know how much is going to be the 12% of this number, 450. Let's say you have $450 that your father is, from which your father is going to give you a 12%. Well, 12, again, you have to change it into its decimal form. 12 into its decimal form is 0.12. Again, the only thing we have to do is multiply times 450. If you multiply 0.12 times 450, the answer is 54. That means that 12% of 450 is 54. There's another way of also finding a percentage of a number. Let's see that you have 500 and you want to know how much is going to be the 10%. Well, since percent is also a ratio, as you can see here, we see 10 should be divided by 100. But we don't know how much is the percentage of 500. So you have to be very careful. See, this is the percentage we want to find, and this is the parts of the numbers that we are using. So we cannot mix it. So this is the percentage as an unknown. So this is a ratio in which we have to use the property of means and extremes. That means that the product of the multiplication of the numerator times the denominator should be equal to the multiplication of the denominator times the numerator. If that's the case, 10 times 500 should be equal to 100 times x. So means and extremes. Well, as you know, multiplications has its inverse. The inverse of multiplication is the division. So if we want to cancel out 100, we have to divide both terms, both sides by 100. Doing so, we cancel out, and we're going to have these two zeros with these two zeros, and only one. So we get x here, and 10 plus times 5 is going to give me 50. So the answer of how much is going to be the 10% of 500 is equal to 50. As you can see, there are two ways of solving this question to find the percent of a number. Well, percentages can also be from a smaller number, like this. 1/4 of a percent is not 1% either, it's just part of it. So if I divide 1 by 4, I will get this decimal form. It's going to be 0.25%. 0.25% means that I have to divide 25 by 100. So this is the decimal form of 1/4%. Well, I can also have a mixed number as a percent, like 5/1/2, which can be written like 5.5, because 1/2 is in the decimal form 1.5. Well, again, 1.5 is divided by 100 as a fraction. If you do this division, your answer is going to have 0.055. So, to find 5.5% of 45, it's just simple to multiply the decimal form times the number. And if you do this multiplication, the answer will be that the 5.5% of 45 is 2.47. That's the way we can easily find percentage of numbers. Remember, percentage means that is a number that's been divided in 100 parts, from which you take part of it, which could be 50, could be 25, could be 47, could be 3, could be 15, could also be a number less than 1. With this, I hope you understand, and I wish you a very good day, and take care of you. Well, God bless you. See you next time.